that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 357th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the amazing Tom Fennell. In the flesh. Okay. Well done, Tom. Every day I get up and I do my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com. You can go there and read the articles that we reference.
Some of them worth reading.
Yes,
Some of them definitely worth
one
reading.
or two of them is worth reading. The rest you can ignore.
Well, that's about right.
Thanks, Tom. It takes a lot of work to do this. You know, I spend about 4 hours every day doing it, and nobody pays me for that. I do get donations to the blog, and they're just about enough to cover expenses.
Well, that's encouraging.
It is, and the donations that we got for the show were just about enough to cover it too. We came just that close to it.
Okay.
So I'm going to pay a couple of dollars extra for my membership dues this year. Anyway, what happens is the news goes up daily at geoharvey.com, and if you want to read one of these articles, which we will start with on January 30th, you can go to the blog and click on the calendar for, you know, the date starting January 30th. We'll try to keep you up to date on when these things appeared. And you can click on it, and then you'd have about 15 articles usually to search through to find the one you want. So.
Well, obviously I read the articles.
Yeah, Tom reads the articles.
And some of them, as I mentioned, are worth reading, and I'll try and mention those that are.
Yeah.
Because some of these are long.
Some of them are long. The long ones I do not read all the way through. Tom reads the long articles all the way through. And I, on the other hand, have to look at about 400 titles every day to figure out which ones we want. And if you think about this, over the time that blog has been active, I've probably looked at over 1 million titles.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
So there we go.
Let's get started here. We got a picture
We
coming
have a
up
picture.
Of an UPS truck.
And I'm not going to make an appeal for money today because this is, you know, we're into a new cycle.
That's an UPS truck.
That's an UPS truck.
It's funny because I have, just to make it fit on my computer, I've shrunk the picture.
Oh?
So on my computer, it looks like a much lower, longer truck.
Oh, really?
It looks like here.
It does not look like it's low and long. It looks a lot like those self-driving shuttles that we've had.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I mean, in terms of the shape.
Yeah.
Those,
very much so. We'll be talking about one of them a little later on.
So this is from Clean Technica.
And let's...
What?
I'm trying to get somebody up here like me.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Okay. Tom is the engineer who maintains this thing, which is why a lot of the time he looks like a deer in the headlights, he's staring in the headlights, because he has to look at, we've got monitors all over the place here.
Yeah.
Including one behind us, but we don't even look at that. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, you'll look at the picture in the background, but it's a UPS truck.
Yep.
And UPS orders 10,000 electric delivery veils from Arrival. Now, that sounds a little strange until you realize that Arrival is the name of a company.
Yes, it is not a rival, it is Arrival. Arrival's electric delivery vans are priced about the same as conventional delivery vans. That's important. They're the same price, but have 50% lower operating costs.
Now, that's significant.
This turns it into, a squirrel could figure this out. Arrival's unique skateboard. The skateboard is the whole bottom of the vehicle. It's the motor, the wheels, everything. The skateboard platforms allow the company to create vehicles in any weight, type, size, or shape to match customer requirements.
It's sort of like the old Beetle VWs. You could take the motor off take the body off and still drive it.
Yeah. And you could take the body off and put a body on.
Which I did.
Did you? What did it look like?
It was called an Aztec Avenger GT12.
Oh my gosh, I remember those.
It looked like a
Porsche.
Sports car.
Maserati.
It looked like, and it wasn't a very good car because it made a lot of noise because the plastic that the body was made of just rebounded sound.
Oh dear. Well, there were a lot of those. There was one that looked exactly like an MGTD or whatever.
Oh, there was all sorts of. There's a guy in Warrensburg still driving one.
Of course, VW did the same thing. They had the Carmen Ghia, which had the same.
Basically, it was the same thing.
car.
Yeah, just put a different body on it.
We are digressing monumentally here.
Well, the market. This is a couple of takeaways, or are they
takes away?
The market for delivery vans and trucks is huge. Okay,
it's
which
huge.
you could expect.
Well,
worldwide,
10,000 vehicles.
More than 300 million commercial vans and trucks on the road.
Yeah.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
UPS will buy 10,000 electric vans between now and 2024, and possibly another 10,000 after that.
Yeah.
They're going to place these vans in service in Europe and North America, and just to keep Arrival on their toes, Amazon has ordered another 10,000 electric vans.
Now, where is Amazon? I mean, Arrival based. Do you remember? I don't remember seeing it.
I think it's American, and I think it's a startup, and I didn't make too many notes about it.
Okay.
But
I don't think there was much about it in the article.
I'm sure they're American because.
Did you actually put that up so people could see it better than?
Well, I had it up there. We'll take
You did. No, don't worry about it.
Well,
there you go.
There it is.
There's the new UPS truck with, as we sat down today to start the show, Tom was talking about how big that windshield is.
Yeah.
It's a big windshield. Okay.
Well, let's move along here.
From Green Tech Media, we have an item.
Renewables set to overtake natural gas in the U.S. power mix, according to the EIA.
Now, this is the first of two articles that we're going to have about this particular thing.
This week?
This week, yeah.
Right.
And, as I put this together, I was thinking, why have I got two of these? And then I read the two and realized there's a reason to have the second one. The DOE's Energy Information Administration has finally come around to the view that renewables will overtake natural gas in the country's electricity mix. The EIA has long been known for its implausibly, I want to repeat that word, implausibly conservative predictions about renewable energy. They keep saying year after year, well, they kept saying, they haven't been saying it in the last year. Every year they would say, renewables have been growing exponentially, but that's going to stop in 18 months.
It ain't stopping though, is it? No. I got a quick takeaway here. A year ago, the EIA predicted gas would remain the company's top power source through 2050.
Right.
It's changed its mind. All power generation sources will lose market share by 2050 except for renewables.
Yes.
Okay. And the USAIA annual energy outlook for 2020, wind's share of the renewables mix will fall to 33%. That's renewables. Okay. Solar will rise to 46%.
Yeah. And I've been keeping an eye on these things. And
there's a lot of changes coming, folks.
I've looked at this, and in the last 2 years, the number of the amount of capacity for upcoming additions to our generating capacity, the amount of capacity that comes from natural gas is like falling off a cliff.
Well, it's been a disappointment.
A disappointment.
They're not getting anywhere near the yields they predicted.
Well, not only that, but people are just not building natural gas burning power plants as much as they were. These
well, they cost money to run. They cost more to run.
And the capacity that's in line today is something like 50% of what it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is really, I mean, that's a 50% decline. But
we'll be mentioning that again.
Yeah, we will. Okay.
There's a picture here I'll bring up. It's making steel.
There it is. Wow,
and
that's
if I can get this
bright.
Mouse here.
There you go.
There we go. Get the mouse up.
There you go.
And there is steel being made.
Yeah, if you dropped your toast on that, it would burn.
I think it would. I think it would get around pretty quick. Well, the article says a Nordic steel giant to use renewable hydrogen to produce fossil-free steel by 2026. That is significant.
It sure is. This is excuse me. We've seen things about this kind of thing in the past. This is just another one of these. But still, it's really interesting, and it makes sense to look at. Momentum is growing toward the decarbonization of one of the world's most energy-intensive industries. Svensk Stål, which is badly pronounced, I apologize for that.
Swedish steel.
Yeah, is turning to renewable hydrogen to replace coal in the production of steel nearly 10 years earlier than it thought would be possible.
Well, this is very interesting. I got a quick takeaway here.
Yeah.
The production of steel is highly energy intensive.
Yes.
Okay. Significant amounts of heat are required to melt the iron ore to produce the steel.
Right.
In addition, carbon is an essential ingredient. The carbon is added to the iron to make it steel.
Yes.
Okay, so they have traditionally used coal
Yes.
for this purpose. Now, they can't eliminate the carbon because then it wouldn't be steel.
Yes.
But they're eliminating the carbon-based heat.
Yes.
Okay, so the use of hydrogen for thermal heat dramatically reduces the amount of coal required. So this company, Svensk, expects to have fossil-free, carbon-free steel. They say carbon-free steel.
They mean it has the carbon in it.
Yeah,
But it's not. They're not
steel's
using.
actually an alloy
Well, yeah.
between iron and carbon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird idea to think about. Why is it that you take something as soft as carbon and you put it into steel and it all of a sudden makes it into iron and it all of a sudden makes it steel? Well, you can think about that and ask yourself, why is it a diamond is so hard? Because that's carbon too. Carbon's a very funny thing.
There's a bunch of images in this particular link.
Yes.
And it says here, well, this is from the images. Breakdown of the steel production process using thermal coal versus using hydrogen. So if you want to get technical, you'll go look at
It's an
graphs.
interesting article with interesting material with it. Okay, we've got an item here from Utility Dive, and this is one of the articles that I thought was really interesting this week because of its implications. Go ahead, Tom.
Coal plants increasingly operate as cyclical, load-following power. That's interesting.
Oh, man.
You're going to explain what that means.
Leading to
inefficiencies and costs.
Yeah. Increasingly, coal plants operate as cyclical or load-following generation units as the power market becomes more saturated with intermittent resources.
Well, they traditionally didn't. You turned them on and you just left them run.
Yeah. A white paper from the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners says, well, these are the baseload power plants that people used to say and still do. We can't run without these plants because you have to have baseload to know that your electricity is going to be there when you turn on the light at 2 o'clock in the morning.
But now we have different ways of acquiring baseload.
And we don't, more and more, we don't need baseload plants. So the coal plants, in order to keep operating, have to stop operating as baseload plants and try to make sure that they can.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, the
follow
times
the
they
load.
are changing.
Yeah, and one of the things to remember here is that a power plant, coal burning power plant, natural gas burning power plant, any thermal plant, nuclear, is like a gigantic tea kettle. You have to heat up the water in it.
Yeah.
Well, it takes a long time to heat that water up. So it's really
they keep them running.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to change the output of one of those things. I see nuclear plants come online after they've been down for a while for maintenance or fuel refueling or whatever. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get them online.
I was thinking days, but you say weeks, huh?
Not very often, but sometimes it takes a long time. Yes, it always takes at least days. So, we're up to Friday, January 31st, and we have an interesting picture here.
Coming up here.
This, to me, is an interesting picture.
Yeah, that's Block Island. I've never been there, but I looked it up on the map.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where they were taking this picture.
Yeah. And one of the things that I find interesting about this, they took this picture from a long way away. Those wind turbines, it's hard to believe, but those wind turbines...
They look like they're right adjacent to the island.
Yeah, they're 3.5 miles from the island.
Okay, so this is really a telephoto picture.
Oh, man, was it.
Big time.
And it was a telephoto picture taken from so far away that it's got all 5 of those wind turbines. But just look at how small the boats are in the harbor.
You can see.
They're tiny. So anyway, what do you got?
U.S. government sees renewables passing natural gas in 20 years.
Yeah, this is the second of the 2 articles that we had about this. For the first time, the EIA's default projection replaces renewables as the largest single source of electricity generation, with renewables surpassing natural gas sometime around 2040. But the renewables prices seem to make the report's projections obsolete already.
Well, a takeaway from the article, these reports are very conservative. And they've done a terrible job projecting the rapid growth of renewable power.
Yeah, but you know, there's one line in this.
That just came right out of the article.
Absolutely, and there's one line in this article that's really important that people have to understand, and that is when the EIA is making the projection, it assumes, for the purpose of the projection, that the political environment will not change. So they're assuming that Donald Trump and company will be in charge of things for the next 20 years.
Well, it's all a hoax, so why bother?
Yeah, well,
let's move along.
He's been let off the hook by the impeachment people, but it's not going to keep him in office. Okay.
U.S. wind hits 9 gigawatts in 2019.
Yeah.
Now, I've always said gig is big.
Gig is big. The wind industry has experienced its 3rd strongest growth year on record in 2019, with 9,143 megawatts added to the grid, according to the American Wind Energy Association.
Yeah, that's where they get 9 gigawatts.
That sure is. Utilities and businesses also set a new record in 2019, announcing 8,726 megawatts of new purchase agreements, this power purchase agreements. So this stuff that's going on the grid is almost all being sold under power purchase agreements. So the 3rd best year in the history of wind isn't depending on incentives. It's depending upon the fact that organizations like Coca-Cola and GM and Nike are signing up to buy the power for the future. That's right.
Well, the PPA is proportional to demand.
Yeah.
Okay. When more people need power, they buy more PPAs.
Yes.
Okay. Well, a quick takeaway here: there's now over 100 gigawatts of operating wind capacity in the U.S. That's more than I would have figured. Comprising more, and you ready for this one? 50,000 wind turbines.
Yes.
In the U.S. Another 40 gigawatts of wind projects are either under construction or in advanced development. Mm-hmm. This is changing the whole picture.
It's changing the picture. And a lot of that, by the way, is offshore. We're starting
and much more of it's going to be offshore because it makes sense.
Absolutely.
I mean, we got a shallow Atlantic coast there.
Yeah, that goes a long ways out.
All the way down to Virginia is real shallow. And it is still shallow to Florida.
Yep. And a lot of the Gulf Coast is pretty shallow,
and
too.
the Gulf Coast is and Lake Erie is shallow, too.
That item, by the way, was from Renews.
Renews, yep. So we got another picture coming up.
We do. You want to put that up, Tom?
No, but I will anyhow.
I don't blame you for not wanting to put it up. What do you got for a title?
Well, we were just talking about this before we started.
Yeah.
Canberra residents flee their homes as state of emergency is declared.
This is from the Daily Mail. Out-of-control bushfires are forcing residents near Canberra, the capital of Australia, to flee their homes as a state of emergency is declared. The worsening erratic conditions have prompted authorities to release a series of urgent leave now alerts and to people in affected areas, and we will be saying more about this in the next item that's coming up.
Well, this article is a long article.
Yeah.
There's 20 pictures in it. They're mostly fires.
Yeah.
There's maps. This is one of those links. I think that if you got time, pick it up and read it. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yeah, I want to say, by the way, as I've been watching these fires, I've been comparing them with what has gone on in the past, because the Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, has been saying, well, we've had these fires for a long time. They've always been here, in fact. And
Well, there's truth in that. But
there
it's
is
still
truth in that.
deceptive.
There is a difference in these fires, and we talked about it last week. This is the number of acres burned is not the largest in history.
Right.
The number of people who have been killed is not the largest in history. But what we have been seeing in this particular fire season is fires that are so aggressive that they do something that they have never done before, which is to burn peat bogs and rainforests. They've got
So they're burning stuff that's never burned before.
yeah, you know, the gum trees that
Yep.
catch fire that are like gasoline-soaked rags as they burn.
And the koalas and
the koalas live in them.
kangaroos
Eucalyptus. Those burn. They burn. They will not recede if they don't burn. And
Yeah,
and
that's
you know,
part of their life cycle.
it's part of their life cycle. But this peat moss burning,
something else
that's a
again.
little bit different. Okay.
Well, I got some takeaways here.
Okay.
For those who don't know, Canberra is the capital district.
It's a capital city.
Well, they call it the Australian Capital Territory.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just
It's
the
like-
analogous to Washington, D.C.
That's right.
Okay, it's located within New South Wales, but it's not New South Wales.
Yes.
Okay, it's near Sydney. It's got about 400,000 residents, so it's not
A lot
an
of people.
insignificant place.
Yep.
Well, the ACT is facing its worst bushfire threat since 4 people died and 500 homes were lost 17 years ago. Okay, there's a running narrative about that in the article. An extreme heat wave swept across Australia on Friday. Now that's last Friday. High temperatures and dry winds expected to spark more bushfires over the weekend, which happened. Okay, and there's more than 80 blazes are still burning as of this article, which was a week ago.
Now, we're up to Saturday, February 1st, with an item that continues this, and this is from the BBC.
Yeah, we do. Australia fires. Residents are told to seek shelter in the Canberra region.
A bushfire near Australian Capital Territory grew to more than 35,000 hectares, which is 135 square miles. So if you want to think about this,
It's a 12-mile square.
Yeah. On Saturday, as officials closed a major motorway, residents in some areas near the capital of Canberra were told that it is, quote, too late to leave, end quote, and they should try to seek shelter. In other words, the roads that they have to get out of where they are, where the fires
They're in fire.
have been cut.
Yeah.
They can't get away.
Yeah.
So they have to find some place, to protect
No,
themselves.
there's a 1-minute time lapse of the fires burning in Canberra. Okay, and this is what this is what they're being told. They're being urged to fill up their bathtubs, buckets, and sinks, so that when the fire arrives, they have access to water to extinguish flames and to drink. They can't even leave.
Yeah.
They're going to sit there and watch.
Try putting out a fire in your house with a bucket load of water.
Yeah.
It's not an easy job. However, I want to point something out, and that is we won't talk about it much this week. Next week we might.
There's more stuff happening.
There's more going on, and what has happened is the entire east coast of Australia has been hit by torrential rainstorms.
Yeah, you were telling me before the show started.
Yeah.
What'd you say, 7 inches of rain?
In one town in Queensland, they had 7 inches of rain.
Wow.
And a lot of this area in New South Wales and Queensland, we're talking about, they had torrential rains a year and a half ago that were so bad that they couldn't plant their crops. And then that was followed by a year and a half of drought, which ended with these fires. And now they've got torrential rains and flooding again.
Kind of crazy.
Well, this is climate change is producing
It's a hoax.
very strange. How the Chinese are having effects in Australia, I don't know, but okay.
Well, we got a picture coming up here,
We do, and this is a picture of the Newport Bridge.
which has absolutely nothing to do with the article.
except that it was taken by the author. This is from Clean Technica.
I've been over that bridge. It's a nice bridge. It runs along, pretty much along the coast of Rhode Island. The road does.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful view from the bridge. Well, what it says here is, oh, by the way, it costs you $5 to go across the bridge. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, well, that's what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, it is.
Republican strategists praise carbon pricing as a way to win votes.
Who'd have thought? Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called for conservative solutions to address climate's consequences. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who is also a Republican from California, talked of a possible existential crisis for the party. Republicans are starting to talk about carbon pricing. The Republicans' leadership is starting to recognize that they have to do something about climate change.
I think you're right.
Even though
Absolutely.
it's a Chinese hoax.
Well, this is kind of, how would you say it, cynical. But conservative solutions, call it a hoax and eliminate regulations. Well, carbon pricing, for what it's worth, is a market-based solution that offers a cost-effective and fiscally conservative
This is
option.
what they say. It's a market-based solution. So it's not a tax. It's a market-based solution. Because they want a free market. So they're going to have a solution that works in the...
Well, yeah.
Playing games with words.
I think so. Well, let's move along here.
Yeah, another item from Clean Technica.
Donald Trump's EPA, ruled by the swamp, is letting companies dump sewage in our rivers. And this is happening, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, let me read this first. The EPA under Donald Trump is now allowing cities to dump raw sewage into rivers. A New York Times article says the Trump administration has decided to reverse almost 95 environmental rules because it considers them too costly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, tell people in New Orleans
right.
who drink water that comes from the Mississippi River that it's okay to dump sewage into the Mississippi River and see what they say.
It makes it taste interesting.
Oh dear. Oh man.
Well, the rules, I got a quick takeaway here.
Yeah.
The rules that the EPA reversed protected more than half of our wetlands and hundreds of thousands of small waterways from pollution. And these protections have been in place since Nixon.
Yes.
So this is not even a democratic thing.
This is stuff that was signed into law by Richard Nixon and some of it by
A long time ago.
Ronald Reagan. And they're trying to undo Richard Nixon's legacy and Ronald Reagan's legacy. Is this something that a real conservative would do? They would try to undo Theodore Roosevelt's legacy if they could do it. In fact, I think arguably they are.
They're trying.
They're trying
to, anyhow.
Is this really conservatism at work?
I think it's money at work.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Oh, we got another picture coming up.
We
here.
do.
Let's get a.
This is what in the article is called a sea can.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that.
It means shipping container.
That's exactly what it means.
It's a term that
That's
exists.
an interesting picture, though.
Yeah, it is. It's a term that exists in a country where people speak English, not American.
Okay.
This is from Canada.
From Canada.
Yeah.
Well, a company braves high winds with high hopes of renewable energy in Nunavut.
In Nunavut.
Nunavut.
Yep. Okanagan. Spearheaded by the Arctic Research Foundation, the project titled Naurvik Inuktitut for fall growing place consists of 2 sea cans. The picture's got one of them.
Well,
outfitted to grow vegetables that proponents hope will ease Arctic food costs. They're powered by the wind. Now, they can't power these things with sunlight because they want them to run in the winter, and they're north of the Arctic Circle.
6 months of the year, there's no sun at all.
So they have to run them with wind power. But you know, if you think about it, wind power is intermittent, right?
Yeah.
Plants do their growth intermittently.
Yeah.
Somehow there's a match there.
I would think so. Well, this is a quick takeaway. In Nunavut, which is in far northern Canada, and it's about as far north as you can get and still be in Canada.
Yes, that's right.
Power is generated from astronomically priced diesel fuel. You got to bring it up there.
It has to be brought up there. And how do you do that, by the way, in a place where there's no roads? Well, the answer is you have to take it by airplane.
Or dog sled.
Well, you could take it by dog sled, but I think that would be even more expensive.
Well, this entire project is run by wind, and there's only 6 months of sunlight available, so they can't use sun. So.
Yeah.
And I'll put the picture back up.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. The picture is still up.
Yeah. Now,
Duh.
What this reminds me of is that I did an interview with if you go down to the co-op, there's a company that sells vegetables in plastic containers down there called Leaf, which is L-E-F with a whatever the bar is above the E.
And what's unique about them?
Well, it's a New Hampshire company.
Okay.
And they have a greenhouse. They might have more because I interviewed them, I think a year and a half ago, and they were talking about building another greenhouse. And greenhouses, as you probably know, could go up pretty fast. But they're doing hydroponic farming in the greenhouse, and they can produce 1 million pounds of produce in 1 acre.
That sounds like a lot.
Each year. Well, it's 20, 25 times as much as you would get out of a place that's
an acre of ground.
Right. And so when you look at this shipping container, that shipping container might supply vegetables in significant quantities to an entire community. A couple of those would. So this is not a Chinese hoax. Let me put it that way.
Well, this is a very sparsely populated place anyhow.
It is,
Getting whatever you're bringing up there is costly.
Yeah, buy lettuce in a place like this.
Well, I would bet that a lot of those people have never even seen lettuce.
Yeah, well, and their historic, cultural approach to vegetables is a little different than ours too.
Well, these are what we basically call Eskimos, and they have not been big on vegetables.
No, they have not been, but they are big on fermented seal fins.
I'll take that. To fermented seal fins, huh?
Was it that or fermented seal liver was what it was? Can you imagine such a thing? There was a cookbook that came out from a school looking for support for the school. So they decided they were going to mimeograph off and sell cookbooks. This was about 20 years ago. And they discovered that the cookbook was reviewed by a newspaper somewhere on the West Coast. The school was in the Aleutians, but they all of a sudden got orders for thousands of these things because they had things like fermented seal liver. You take the seal liver, you put it in a snowdrift, you leave it there for 6 months, and then you cook it up and serve it. And the article adds, the recipe adds at the end, children generally don't like this.
I wouldn't bet against that one.
No.
Well, let's move on here.
Okay.
Documents show scientists revolt at Trump's crazy hurricane claims.
Oh dear.
I remember seeing him talking about this.
And those, he was talking about this Hurricane Dorian crossing Florida and hitting Alabama, and he had a chart that had a little thing drawn on it. Well, we talked about that at the time.
Yes, we did.
But it's come up in the news again. And this item, by the way, came from the Sydney Morning Herald, which was just a convenient place to get it. It was all over the news. A flurry of emails from NOAA's top officials and scientists show their consternation and alarm after President Trump falsely claimed Hurricane Dorian could hit Alabama. The emails were released in response to a Freedom of Information Act request. Now, that's what puts it into the news now, is that all of a sudden we can see what was going on in NOAA, where, among the weather scientists and so forth, who are, saying, wait a minute, the president is saying something that's absolutely false, and anybody who believes him might want to evacuate or
I can
board up his
remember
store.
seeing him making this presentation.
Absolutely.
And I looked at it, I said, that's crazy.
It is crazy.
Well, this is the takeaway. In September, Trump was depicted in the Oval Office holding a chart with an extended impact zone of Hurricane Dorian.
Yeah.
Okay, Trump claimed that Alabama was most likely to be hit. I don't even know why he did that.
I don't know, but I will tell you, I don't think that this is a conspiracy at work. I think it's just a symptom of the way Donald Trump thinks.
I think you're right. Well, the National Weather Service in Birmingham corrected him.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
and a top NOAA official called the president's behavior crazy.
yes.
I don't think he even knows why he did it.
I don't think he knows why he does anything, to tell you the truth. Everything that Donald Trump does. Well, I'm going to get into politics. I
Well, we got
shouldn't do
another picture coming up.
We do indeed. This is a guy. I actually saw this guy once up close.
I had dinner with him once.
Huh? Did you?
Yeah, a long time ago. He was mayor of Burlington.
I remember when he became mayor of Burlington, and a couple of very conservative friends of mine were outraged that a major city in the United States had a socialist
Oh
mayor.
my God.
All right, we're up to Monday, February 3rd, and this is from Politico.
Power to the people. Bernie calls for a federal takeover of electricity production. That isn't exactly what he said, but
It's not, and you know, this is sometimes we have to correct these things. It's not what was said there. It may be that what they're implying in that title is actually less than what we're going to have to do, because at some point we're going to have to make up for lost time. Let me read this. Sanders laid out a $16 trillion climate change plan that would transition U.S. electricity generation away from fossil fuels toward renewable resources like wind, solar, and hydropower by 2030. That's far faster than any other Democrat candidate's target.
let's mention this. This is a long and detailed article. It's interesting. There's a 6-minute long audio clip
Yes.
talking about it, and it's radical.
It's
but
radical.
It's interesting.
But it's interesting, and one of the things that I find interesting about it is that if you look at this and you look at things that came from Mark Jacobson and things like that,
Yeah.
it becomes clear that this could save us a lot of money.
I think it could. Well, this is what he's trying to do. He's not. The article kind of implies, you know, he's trying to socialize America.
Well, that's what the title implies.
That's what it implies. This is what he says. These organizations, though Sanders wants federally owned utilities that
Yeah.
already exist, okay, like the TVA,
Right?
to build massive amounts of wind and solar power.
Right.
On their own in their own territories.
Yes.
Okay? These organizations currently provide power from hydro dams to 33 states. They're doing this already.
Yes.
Okay, and they would be able to sell the increased green energy to local utilities nationwide. But nobody's making them buy it. They got to be competitive. So Sanders has defended his plan as the only one that could reduce greenhouse emissions quick enough to meaningfully combat climate change.
That is something that I absolutely agree with Bernie Sanders on. And by the way, just to be clear about this, you know,
Yeah.
fair disclosure, I voted almost straight Republican from 1968
Yeah, you mentioned
until
this.
2002.
Yeah.
In 2004, I did not, because in the interim, I had figured out that climate change not only was a serious problem, but was being covered up by the top level people in the Republican Party. In the last election, faced with a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, I voted for Bernie Sanders as a write-in,
Okay.
with Tulsi Gabbard as
Vice President.
vice president. And she, by the way, is the person who was the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, who left that position in order to endorse Bernie Sanders.
Okay.
Now, obviously, right now she's running against Bernie
Yeah.
Sanders, and she
Who's on first?
yeah, she made a bunch of points that I've been following, and one of them, and this is something that I think is true. You know, I was looking at emails from her and stuff like that and saying, I don't understand why she's doing what she's doing. I respect her a great deal, but climate change is the biggest problem we've got, and she's talking about solving the problem of forever wars and things of that nature. And then I realized when she voted present on the impeachment in the House
Yeah.
as a Democrat.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand that until I saw her email explaining why, and then I realized we're not going to solve climate change if we can't talk with each other. That's where she is.
Hey, she's got a very valid point.
Yeah. So
Well, we'll move along here.
we will. We have an item from The Guardian, and here is more
We got
fires.
I got Clean Technica.
Oh, yeah, and I'm putting up a picture too early. This is an item from Clean Technica.
Yeah. Super Bowl ads announce Hummer electric truck and the, quote, quiet revolution. And by the way, the Super Bowl is the biggest single day in advertising.
Yeah. 30-second ad costs $6 million or something.
Really?
Phew. General Motors will start selling a battery-powered Hummer pickup truck in May of 2020 to whet the appetite of the truck-driving public. The new Hummer is a topic of a 30-second television ad. Did you see the ad, Tom?
I did.
Yeah.
You tell us you can see it here, and you can.
Yes. Running during the Super Bowl, and I was infuriated by this ad.
Were you?
Yeah, I mean, they're coming up with an electric vehicle, and what do they say about it? It'll do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It has 1,000 horsepower. And I'm telling you, it's saying we don't have to change our attitudes. We don't have to change our dedication to power,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
being number one. What
Well-
we need to do is just, do it electrically because that's what sells. And it made me really mad.
I can see where you're coming from. I can see where you're coming from at all. They're not they're all they're looking at is dollar signs.
Yeah.
They're not looking at anything else.
Okay.
But we got a picture.
Now
coming
we've
up here.
got
I'll
the
try and
fires
find it.
near Canberra, and this is from The Guardian.
That is Canberra, and the article says, if there is a silver lining in the clouds of choking smoke, it's that this may be a tipping point.
As a climate scientist on sabbatical in Australia, I've had plenty of conversations about the climate crisis lately.
When did you do that?
Well, I'm quoting this guy who wrote, this is an opinion piece. Although the Murdoch media make it seem as if there's plenty of debate, the reality is that most Australians I talk to get it.
Well, Australia's horrific bushfires could be the catalyst that pushes the world to a mass recognition that it's time to act.
You know, there was
point.
There was an article that I didn't put into for the show, and I don't even recall whether I put it up on my blog. But it was saying basically, in the United States, most Republicans want to deal with. They want us to move to renewable energy, but they are not willing to admit that there's a climate crisis.
Puts them in a box, doesn't it?
It does, yes. Okay. Are we done with that one?
Australia's horrific bushfires could be the catalyst that pushes. I said this, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
It's not a physical tipping point where the global climate undergoes dramatic, irreversible, and catastrophic change, but a psychological one.
Yes.
The fact that the bushfires tore through Alaska as we ended the hottest decade ever recorded is no coincidence.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, we're up Tuesday, February 4th with an
Well,
item
we got
from
our friend here again.
Clean Technica. Oh, no picture of Greta.
No picture coming up.
Yeah.
No. Oh, you gave it away. Greta Thunberg, nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Wow, she's only
Again.
17 years.
This is the second time she was
It's the
nominated.
second time.
She was nominated last year by a Norwegian legislature.
Yeah.
This time, well, you're going to tell us who.
Two
nominated
members
her.
of the Swedish Parliament nominated 17-year-old Greta Thunberg for this year's Nobel Peace Prize. Tunberg started just 3 years ago with alone climate protests on Fridays at the Swedish Parliament. Since then, she has emerged as a world leader.
Well, people know who she is now.
They certainly do.
Action for reducing our emissions and complying with the Paris Agreement is an act of peace.
Yes.
Okay, that's not me talking.
Yeah.
Last September, Greta delivered a strongly worded speech to the UN Climate Action Summit in New York City, in which she said, and I remember her saying this, "How dare you? You've stolen my dreams and my childhood
Yeah.
with your empty words."
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now we have
Oh, you know the picture.
Item from the BBC, a very colorful item of an oil terminal.
It's an oil terminal. It's an oil. Yeah,
This
that's a
I
terminal,
thought was
isn't
a
it?
really interesting article. It was something that I did not expect to see in the news.
Coronavirus and oil. Why crude has been hit hard.
The world's biggest oil producers could be about to reduce output as they grapple with fallout of the coronavirus. As China has responded to the medical emergency, travel restrictions are in place. Factories, offices, and shops remain shut. The result is a 20% reduction in the demand for oil.
That's interesting.
Oh, man.
Quick takeaway here. China is the world's second largest economy and a key engine of global economic growth.
Yeah.
Any negative impact in China is almost certain to ripple across the world.
Which is why Donald Trump has got a trade war against it.
Yeah. The cost of crude oil has hit its lowest level in a year after falling 20% since its peak in January. That's last January.
And by the way, today in my news, there was an article that said that Exxon Mobil has lost 41% of its market value in the last 5 years. Yes.
Wow.
And
that's significant.
It is. And I looked that up and found that, guess what? You know, there's a Dow Jones Oil and Gas Index. The Dow Jones Oil and Gas Index has lost 47%. So ExxonMobil is actually doing a little bit better than other oil companies.
That's interesting.
But, you know, I mean, they're in trouble. And the trouble...
times they are a-changing.
I guess. Okay, we've got an item from CNN.
That we do. Scientists find another threat to Greenland's glaciers lurking beneath the ice.
The warmer air is not the only threat to Greenland's ice sheet. A study published in the journal Nature Geoscience found that the ice is being attacked from below. Warm water, ocean water is moving underneath the vast glaciers, is causing them to melt even more quickly.
This is Greenland.
Greenland.
Last week we talked about Antarctica.
Antarctica, yeah.
Something very similar, or at least they're trying to find out why it's melting so fast.
Yeah.
Well, there's an interesting 1-minute video here which depicts a bunch of sled dogs
Yes.
sitting in a lake. Yeah. That's interesting.
We actually had that picture at one of our shows.
I think we did,
quite a long time ago.
Well, mass loss from Greenland's ice sheet is currently the single largest driver of sea level rise globally.
Right.
Okay, it is currently melting 7 times faster than it was in 1992.
Wow.
The ice sheet holds enough water to raise global sea levels by more than 24 feet.
Which would put...
Well, it's going to take them a long time to melt all of that ice. We're
will.
talking like 100 years. But
yes, we are. But, you know...
But still, it's significant because every little bit counts.
That's right. There was an article the same day about a guy who jumped into what they call a supraglacial lake in Greenland.
I bet he was surprised.
No, he wasn't. This was I was surprised. I mean, he put on goggles.
Yeah.
And he put on just ordinary bathing trunks.
Yeah. He didn't have a wetsuit.
No, and he just went into the water. The guy's 50 years old. And he said it was really kind of frightening.
Invigorating.
Invigorating, yeah. This is one of those guys who goes swimming in ice water.
Yeah.
You know.
There's one every year.
Yeah, he said that he saw that there were super glacial lakes, something like 65,000 of them or whatever, in Greenland, and he wanted to go and investigate. So he did. And he said, under the water, there are tunnels going through the glacier, and that water is able to move.
Dissipating all over the place, huh?
It's crazy. He said it was really frightening. Not because it was cold, but just because it was frightening to see what he saw. Okay, we are up to Wednesday, February 15th. We're just cooking along here.
Yeah, we're cooking along. We'll have to go back and revisit some of these. Well, the Saugeen, or Saugeen, I don't know how you say it, Ojibwe Nation has saved Lake Huron from a nuclear waste dump.
Now, you know, this is
significant.
from Counterpunch, and this is the only place I found this. But Counterpunch generally publishes articles because of things that actually happen. So I don't know what the truth of this is, whether they actually, that Ojibwe Nation actually stopped the thing, but this is sufficiently.
Well, they did because of an agreement. An agreement was made about 2 years ago that this couldn't go forward unless
Without
the
their permission.
Ojibways gave them
So
permission.
they actually did sink it. I missed
And
that.
they voted
in the
on it,
article.
and it went down.
Okay.
It went down significantly.
In a major victory for Canada's First Nations, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation overwhelmingly voted down the proposed deep geological repository for storage of low-level and intermediate-level radioactive nuclear waste next to Lake Huron.
Well, 85% of them said no.
Yeah.
And in saying no, they passed up $150 million.
Wow.
Okay? There's a nice sub-article on this article called A Sordid History. A Sordid History. If
Yeah.
you got the time, read it because it's interesting.
Yeah. Passing up $150 million for
A small tribe, that's a lot of money.
I wonder how many people are in that tribe. That's a lot of money.
There's not a lot of people in it.
Yeah. That's a lot of money per person.
A lot of money.
So, yeah.
Well, the First Nations in Canada are starting to exercise their power as independent nations.
Yes.
They have that status in Canada, which they don't really have down here.
They're supposed to have
They're
it.
supposed to have it, but it's been diluted.
The United States, as far as I know, has never been truthful in treaties with the American Indians.
Duh. Didn't they make movies about that?
Well, you know, there was a guy whose name was Christian Herter, and I think he was the Secretary of State for Franklin Roosevelt.
Uh-huh.
But his family ran a company called Herter's, which went out of business and then it was revived, and I think it's still back in business now, in Minnesota, where they sold sporting goods and they sold guns and they sold
That kind of stuff.
You wouldn't believe what their catalog was like. It was unbelievable. They'd have an item about a silent dog whistle that they sold.
Yeah.
And they would tell you that you could do wonderful things with this silent dog whistle. And then right below it, they'd have a thing saying...
Everything but call a dog, right?
Yeah. And then they would say right below it, silent dog, another thing for sale, silent dog whistles don't work. Use this one instead. This was the way they did things. It was hysterical. But anyway, Christian Herter said, anybody who trusts the federal government of the United States doesn't have to think beyond what it has done to American Indians to know that it can't be trusted.
That's a valid point.
You know, I'm not quoting him there.
No, it's definitely a valid point.
But that's the point he was making. Okay.
Well, we'll move along here. We're talking about Indians again, but this time it's a different kind of Indian.
Yeah.
Thanks to renewable energy, electric bulbs will finally glow in 1,200 Indian schools.
This is from the Kashmir Monitor. And, you know, I have to check.
That's Kashmir, India.
Yeah, that's right. I have to check these news sources. CNN, I'm pretty sure that if I put a link into a CNN article, when a reader for the blog goes to that link, it's going to
CNN
get
links
there.
are all pretty good.
They're usually pretty good. But when we're talking about, when I come across a news site, and I don't actually know in my mind.
You mean like the Kashmir Monitor?
Like the Kashmir Monitor, Counterpunch. I didn't know. Can I rely on Counterpunch? Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, I've seen things like the Sydney Morning Herald go squirrely because or BBC, because there's an article. I put in the link to the article and the little blurb about it. And then for some reason I click on that to see what's going to happen, and the
something else comes up.
Disappeared.
Yeah.
Something else comes up. That was what happened. Well, I had to check this Kashmir Monitor. So I'm sorry, I went on a little diversion there. Students in far-flung areas across the Kashmir Division have a reason to smile as more than 1,200 government schools will be provided with round-the-clock electricity from clean, renewable energy sources. Previously, only 36% of the schools had power.
There's a quick takeaway here. Solar power will generate a kilowatt in elementary schools, and in secondary and high schools, 5 kilowatts.
So
Okay, where they didn't have any power at all.
they didn't have any power at all. So all of a sudden they're going to have light bulbs.
Yeah.
You know, which are probably going to be LEDs. But you know, I had to check this Kashmir monitor to make sure that people would be able to get to it.
Yeah.
And it seemed to work out.
I think it was a slightly different article, but the message was the same.
Really?
I think so.
No,
yeah.
that's another thing. They changed these
It just
articles.
had a different title. It was basically the same energy.
Okay.
Same.
Okay, and we are up to our final item for today from the CNN. And this is a picture that reminds me of my brother. I'll have to explain why.
Well, that's Billie Eilish. And
Yeah.
I didn't know who Billie Eilish is.
Did you try to find out?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
I went to YouTube and I listened to her sing.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, she has a very nice voice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, what the article says is from Billie Eilish, or is it Eilish?
I don't know.
Like E-I-L-I-S-H. It's E-I-L-I-S-H.
I will say Eilish.
To Maroon 5, green touring is becoming the new normal.
Green touring.
You're going to have to explain to us what
Yeah,
they
right.
mean by that.
Green touring has been around for decades with musicians including Neil Young and Bonnie Raitt among the movement's pioneers. But effects of climate change, as the effects of climate change continue to intensify, the music industry is now making this approach mainstream. There are a bunch of musicians that this article talked about.
There's pictures of about 20 of them.
Yeah, who have decided that they're going to approach, you know, their touring
Well,
thing.
I'll explain what they're doing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Green touring venues are banned from giving out plastic straws and are required to have water refill stations, which are expected to eliminate over 35,000 single-use water bottles. Mm-hmm. So they're doing something.
Yeah, and in the case of Billie Eilish, whose picture you should put back up, she has made her hair green and she's made her clothes green and she's under green lights. My reference to my brother, I have a brother who lives in western New York State, and he has done something that I think he should be very proud of. He's a ceramics engineer.
Okay.
And he's lived all over the world. And he developed a filter that is ceramic. So you make this filter and you just put water through. The water actually goes through the ceramic because it's got pores.
Yeah.
And you can backwash this and get rid of whatever junk
sediment is in the
accumulates. But he figured out that if you do this and you wash this with silver compound, silver nitrate, for example, and then you treat it by, for example, firing it, you get silver all over the. It's not terribly visible, but it gets all over the ceramic, and silver is deadly. It's deadly toxic to microbial life forms.
Is it really?
And when he was living in Bangladesh, the government of Bangladesh took one of these things and tested it by putting water straight out of the Ganges River into it. And they came up with water coming out with a bacteria count of 0.
No kidding.
And
That's significant.
Yeah,
that
especially
could be very
considering
helpful worldwide.
Well, Bangladesh has got a third of its population dependent on wells that were dug by the British before they left.
Yeah.
And the British tested those wells every which way to find out that the water was safe, except they forgot one thing, and that was arsenic. And the result is a third of the population of Bangladesh, and this is millions of people, are suffering from potential arsenic poisoning. A lot of them are dying of cancer. So they were thrilled about this. Reed has got patents on it, and the patents are utterly worthless because any village potter can make one of these things for about $3 anywhere in the world. So how do you maintain a patent on that? You don't.
You can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You want to put that up?
I don't, but I will.
There you go. It's time to say goodbye, so we're going to say have an unmistakably ducky week.
Huh?
Why don't you put us both up so we can wave goodbye? This is part of my effort to say goodbye. You know, my daily thing.
Yeah.
All right. I take the.
Now you get a weekly slogan, huh?
Yeah, I do a thing like this every day at the blog, and so I figured I'd do it for the week. So, see you next time, or hope you see us next time, because we won't see you.